Friends, hello there and welcome to another episode in the teaching series. Hey, before we jump into today's teaching, wanted to let you know that the trips to Israel for next year were just released. So there are 2 trips, general public, which means anybody can apply for them, one in March, one in May. The May one is going really fast, and if you're interested in having a bit cooler temperatures, then check out the March one. But if you've wanted to go and engage the text in its actual context, walking it out in the land of Israel, check it out at walkingthetext.com. There's a tab for the study trips, and you'll find all the information that you need to know. So there's that. Now, here's what we get to do today, is that we are going to start off a series that's going to last several weeks. The first 24 teachings of the teaching series have all been pretty much individual teachings, and I've just had this sense that we should look at doing a series that way we can engage something for several weeks and not just jump from one topic to another topic every other week. So that has been my intention actually for several weeks to begin doing this for this one. And last week I got some unsolicited feedback, which is always great. And people were saying, we love the teaching series. Have you thought about doing a series where it'd be just a little more connected for several weeks in a row? And I thought, hey, if you're thinking it and I'm thinking it, then let's do it. So here's what we're going to tackle. Luke 19, just the first 10 verses, the story of Zacchaeus. I have been wrestling with this story for 6 months now, and I just now feel ready to begin teaching it. So every week, I would just highly encourage you that you read the story before you jump into the teaching episode. It's only 10 verses. I'm going to read just the first 4 verses today, and we're just going to kind of look at this story from a number of different angles over the next several weeks. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it. This is a story that's just blown my mind. Normally, this is a story touted as a great kids story, a children's story, but I think you're going to find this thing absolutely and utterly fascinating. And as always, we're going to engage the text in its context. So just a reminder that the questions associated with these 6 lenses, which you get in the free ebook that I wrote, The Number One Mistake Most Everyone Makes Reading the Bible, that you get at walkingthetext.com. I would imagine most of you have that. If not, check that out. But here is that graphic, and this is just going to be sitting behind all of the teachings. I'm very rarely going to show this, but as I'm drawing out these insights and making these connections, it's because of the questions connected to these lenses that have pushed me there, and want to continue to encourage you as you read and engage and study the text that you ask those questions as well, as we all try to grow in our ability to understand what the text meant in its original context. So there we go. First 4 verses, Luke 19, buckle up. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and he was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. So the first thing I just want to highlight is we have a location. We have Jericho. So one of the questions we always want to ask when we get a place name is, where are we on a map? What do we know about the place? And so on a map, we are 15 miles to the northeast of Jerusalem. And they're connected together via a road. So anybody who is trying to get up from Jerusalem that came and ended up in the vicinity of Jericho would go through Jericho and would go up to Jerusalem. Jerusalem sits 2,300 feet above sea level. Jericho is 800 feet below sea level. So interestingly, you have a 3,100 foot elevation change over the course of 15 miles. By the way, this is the whole backdrop to the parable of the Good Samaritan. Jesus begins and says there was a guy who was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Of course he's going down 3,100 feet over the course of 15 miles. So Jericho is actually a very important city for a number of reasons. It's strategically located. So you have a lot of trade routes that go through Jericho. If you're crossing from Israel into Jordan, if you're coming from the northern part of Israel in the ancient world, many of them would bypass Samaria and they would come down through the Jordan Rift Valley. The Jordan River Valley or the Great Rift Valley, you hit Jericho and you go up to Jerusalem for people to go up for the festivals or for the feast. Very important just from that traffic location. Now, Jericho is also what it is for a number of other reasons. And just to give you kind of a cool photo, this is if you're going from Jericho up to Jerusalem. This is Todd Bolin. I have a ton of pictures from Todd and BiblePlaces.com in this particular teaching. But this is the route going up to Jerusalem. Now, Jericho itself is situated in a very deserty area, but it's actually an oasis. So here is Old Testament Jericho. You go a mile south of here. Here's New Testament Jericho. You can start to see more of the greenery here in this Jericho area. And that's because it has springs. And one particular spring, it just provides tons and tons and tons and tons of water for irrigating the entire area. And with its rich soil, with the fresh water available for irrigation, and for its amazing location from a climate perspective. It has the most amazing climate. It's like San Diego. It is nice all year round. In fact, because its climate was so fantastic, you just see it just bursting forth with greenery, all of these date palm trees. It was actually called the City of Palms because of the date palms. But it was a location that if people wanted to live in Jerusalem and that they were wealthy, they would have a second home in Jericho. A lot of people who had work in Jerusalem, like the priests and the Levites who had to go up and help a couple of weeks out of the year, and then also for the festivals, they would actually live in Jericho and go up to Jerusalem. This is again the backdrop to the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke 10. You have a priest and a Levite going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. They're probably going back home after their service. And so Jericho was a place that people wanted to be at just because of, again, you had amazing climate, you had trade going through there, it became an extremely wealthy city because of all of these factors. And Herod the Great actually built 3 palaces here. So here is the footprint of Herod's area that he built up. And here's a great artist rendering from Balazs below of Archaeology Illustrated showing Herod's complexes here. But this is where Herod had multiple palaces. I mean, this was the place to be. It was almost kind of functioning as well like Florida would. So people in Jerusalem, if they had that, that second home, the weather's nasty in Jerusalem, you go 15 miles, drop 3,100 feet in elevation, you're going basically to the nicest climate in all of Israel, and the weather will change dramatically. And so this made Jericho very famous, and it was very strategically located between all of these regions, which boded really well for taxation. And that's why we're introduced to Zacchaeus, and we are told he is a chief tax collector. Now, in next week's episode, I'll help you to better understand how the whole tax system worked and why that's important to understand when you're engaging the Bible. But suffice to say, this is one of the most hated people on the face of the planet for the Jews. Tax collectors were generally Jewish. Almost in every case, they were Jewish in the land of Israel. And they were collecting taxes on behalf of Rome, which was the empire. And this is the only reference we have to a chief tax collector. We have reference to tax collectors. Matthew's a tax collector. There are other tax collectors, but this is the only reference to the chief tax collector, which means they're running an entire region. Zacchaeus is the godfather, if you will, of Jericho, and he is utterly hated and despised. In fact, an early Jewish text, the Mishnah, states that you can lie to tax collectors because they're such scumbags, if you will. I mean, it's amazing. And again, I'll help you understand that a little bit more later, but just suffice to say, this is really interesting that we meet Zacchaeus in this particular story. Tax collectors were wealthy. We'll help you understand that next week. Chief tax collector is really wealthy, and yet Luke goes out of his way to say he was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He's accentuating the point, and we'll come back to that later on. Now that you got a sense for Jericho, it is an incredibly wealthy city, and Zacchaeus is like the godfather, but he's hated by the Jewish people. It says that he can't get to Jesus because he is short. Now, technically in the Greek, it says that he is short of halikia. And halikia is a Greek word that means stature. And stature has three facets to it. It can be age, height, or social status. As a chief tax collector, I don't think he is short of age, meaning he's young. If you could be young and be a tax collector, Matthew, but to be a chief tax collector and young, I don't think so. Okay, so I don't think that's a viable option. Most people have interpreted the story as height. Maybe. I actually tend to believe that it has more to do that he is short on social status. Meaning because he is so despised and so hated among the people. Now, among the wealthiest people, probably not. They probably have some bribe relationship going on there. But the majority of people are poor in the first century world in the land of Israel. And so he is despised. And I think that what happens is that Jesus is coming through Jericho. And because all the people are trying to get to Jesus, Zacchaeus is being pushed on the outside, that he is short on social status. Now, maybe height as well, but definitively on social status. And so because he can't get to Jesus, we're told that he climbs a sycamore fig tree. Now, this is a very specific detail that Luke includes, and I think he does it for a couple of reasons. The one that we'll just tackle right now is just from a practical reason, is that a sycamore fig tree, it's not a sycamore and it's not a fig tree, it's a sycamore fig. It's a kind of an in-between, and I'll help you understand a little bit more about that in another later episode. This is going to be fun, by the way. We're going to just layer this and have a lot of fun looking at this story from a number of different angles. But a sycamore fig tree has branches that are low enough to the ground that you can climb up on. Now, this is a taller sycamore fig tree. This one's actually in Jericho. There are other sycamore figs that I've seen that have lower branches, but even here, a dude has climbed up a tree. So Zacchaeus climbs the tree in order to see Jesus. And again, this is why the story is so well known. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree. You get it, right? Some of you are thinking, oh, I got that song out of my head years ago. Don't do that to me. All right? So you have this story. And this is where I just want to press pause, because I think we've got enough information to just make a big observation that I think we can all draw from this teaching. Because this teaching is really much a foundation teaching, but I also want us always to walk away with something that we can walk out. And so here's my premise. My premise is this, that Zacchaeus had a longing to be changed. And here's where I get that from. A couple of details, actually 3 actions that help us to understand this. And the first is this: Zacchaeus wants to see. So notice with me verse 3. He wanted to see who Jesus was. Verse 4, he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him. Now, if you're reading the NIV, there's another see in verse 3 that's actually not there in the Greek, but there's 2 times we have this word see in reference to what Zacchaeus wants to do. Here's why I think this is important, is that chapters and verses didn't come until much later. In fact, verses, we didn't get into the middle of the 16th century AD. If you take out the chapters and verses, then you have right before this story, even if you keep the chapters and verses, but oftentimes we see chapter 19 and we think, well, it's a new chapter. Well, it is, but it isn't. There's a continuation. The story at the end of chapter 18 is Jesus just first coming into Jericho. The story is telling us that Jesus is going to come through Jericho. He's going up to Jerusalem. But there is a blind man who wants to see. And so he calls out to Jesus, and Jesus goes, what do you want me to do for you? He has a desire, he has a longing to see, and he pursues Jesus, if you will. Now, we have stories in the scripture, lots of them in the Gospels, where Jesus is pursuing people. And Jesus even pursues Zacchaeus in this story. But it starts with Zacchaeus having a desire to be changed and pursuing Jesus. And just like the story before, you have someone in need, they want to see, and they're going to Jesus. I believe that Luke is keeping these stories together to see that Zacchaeus is doing the same thing. He isn't blind, but he wants to see there's something that needs to change, and he's going to Jesus for it. So this is a very key connection to the story before. The second thing he does is he runs. Friends, no dignified male in the first century world runs. This is shameful. In an honor and shame culture where every action either brings honor or shame, this is one of the most shameful things a dignified man can do. Children can run, adult men do not run. What's more, he climbs a tree. Same thing, no dignified male climbs a tree. Kids climb trees, males do not climb trees. Adults do not climb trees in this first century world, and yet he is shaming himself because he wants to see Jesus. And again, my premise here is Zacchaeus had a longing to be changed. And here's the continuation of this. He put himself into a position for an encounter. Again, there are stories where Jesus pursues people, but friends, this story doesn't happen if Zacchaeus doesn't go after Jesus to do the best he can to get to Jesus, to be in a position to encounter him. And this is where, for me, as I've been wrestling with this story, thinking through how the story begins, if you will, is that I think we can all take away something from what Zacchaeus does. Because I think that there's something in all of our lives that we can identify that we want to have changed, that we have a longing or desire to have changed. And maybe it's just something that we want to get better at. Maybe it's just something that we need to get rid of, that it is just crippling us and it's doing something to us on the inside that is negative and it's harmful to us and to those around us, even if they don't know it. And we're like, I just have a longing to be different, a longing to be changed. Zacchaeus did something about that. Because whenever we feel this way, we often don't engage in a conversation. We don't reach out to someone. We don't tell them what we're going through because we feel a sense of shame or we have a sense of fear. Listen, Zacchaeus ended up pushing through both of these. There was definitely this sense where he knew he was despised. He knew he was hated. He was pushed to the outside, and yet he didn't allow that to hold him back, to preclude him from getting to Jesus. He found a way. He worked through, there was shame involved in what he did, and he says, I don't care. Like, I have to get to Jesus. There was a longing, there was a desire, and Zacchaeus had to break through. He had to do some things that were really uncomfortable in order to get that desired changed he was looking for. And he had to put himself into a position in order for that to happen. And so just as I've been wrestling with this story, and I just want to invite you into this wrestling as well, is what needs to change? What do you long to have differently? And what are you doing, or how can you put yourself into a position in order to have an encounter, in order to get what you need, in order to grow, to get rid of that thing, to begin to address that thing, just to be better maybe in some cases, because Zacchaeus broke through in order to be there. Friends, where, like Zacchaeus, do you need to climb the tree? What tree do you need to climb to be in a position to have the conversation, to have the encounter, to change, to have that desire of being different, of improving, of dealing with this thing to happen in your own life? So friends, I think that's what Zacchaeus invites us into as we just look at the story. I've been invited into it. I want to invite you into it as well. And so there you go. There's part one of the Zacchaeus story. So as always, I'm going to put additional questions at Walking the Text underneath this teaching to help you kind of wrestle through, go a bit deeper with this teaching. I also just want to mention that there's a place to leave comments. Some of you know that if you've been there. But one of the things that I want to do is at the very end of this series, I want to do a teaching on just answering your questions. So feel free to leave comments as you've been leaving, mention other connections you're making. But if there are certain questions that arise that you would like me to tackle, just throw them in the comments. And I hope to be able to do that at the very end of the series if we have enough questions to do an entire teaching around. So friends, thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks so much for listening. If you are listening to the podcast, and may you walk out the text well in your life.